The digital newsroom can be seen as an opportunity for journalists rather than a threat, and this can be seen across every media platform. For example, radio has benefited greatly from the progress of the digital newsroom. It has become available to a wider audience, and its greater accessibility has seen audiences increase to over 30 million in September this year. For example, during the Ashes series, I myself used BBC Radio 5 Live's live commentary from Australia, which was broadcast online. This proved to be a great way to engage in the cricket, as I was able to do other things online alongside the broadcast. For example, on some radio station websites there are pictures and text that accompany the broadcast. The cricket is a prime example of this. The live text of the match is published below the related links to listen to the match. Furthermore, the quality of the broadcast is crystal clear, unlike listening to an AM broadcast on a standard radio set. In addition to this, the converged newsroom has opened up great opportunities for radio broadcasters, as they can add columns to their relevant websites when broadcasting online. Furthermore, shows can produce podcasts that allow pundits and presenters to go into particular issues that may not have received the airtime it may have deserved. One could use cricket coverage as an example again. Jonathan Ague, the BBC's lead cricket commentator, has a weekly written column on the BBC website, alongside a podcast featuring interviews and features with former cricketer Geoffrey Boycott. This allows the BBC team to go into greater depth on issues and topics that can't be discussed live. This isn't exclusive to radio, however, or sports coverage. Newspapers, especially local media earlier on and now national, have been quick to jump on the multimedia wagon, and it could be said that it has proved to be a success so far. Take local newspapers such as the Kent Messenger, who have introduced a website to go alongside their paper, but within this website are regular video bulletins bringing the latest news. This provides benefits for both producers and consumers. For producers, this creates a need for multi-skilled journalists. Producers and editors are no longer limited to a newsroom of only print journalists or photojournalists. Most are now a combination of online, broadcast, print and photography. Previously, a major story would require a strong team of tech-savvy operators. However, now, these can be reduced to as less as one person. Technology, along with the skills of journalists, is coming together as part of the digital revolution, meaning more can be done for less. Additionally, the development of multi-skilled journalists and the converged newsroom has also brought about the literal and physical convergence of a newsroom. Take, for example, The Telegraph. It brought together its entire editorial team into one building, spanning 65,000 square feet, based around a central table known as the Hub. This is so much more practical and effective for the Telegraph Media Group, rather than having to track down personnel, and makes for a better working environment. This is also a system that the Lancashire Evening Post employed, as they were one of the first print organisations to embrace digital. It can also be said that this can reduce costs. Furthermore, the more mediums that one news organisation can cover, it makes it more accessible and appealing to consumers, which in turn will increase circulation and perhaps where profitable, profit for that news organisation. For consumers, this gives them a more enjoyable, interesting experience as they receive and consume their news. Rather than just reading words off a page, consumers are now able to read, listen and watch their news. Consumers are able to interact with their news and become part of the story. One of the byproducts of the ever-changing digital revolution in which we find ourselves is the advent of citizen journalism. Anybody with access to the internet, a camera, or any sort of recording device can now report events in front of them. Whilst at first this can seem to be a hindrance and a threat to journalists, this can work to their advantage too. The BBC, for example, relies heavily on user-generated content. During the 7/7 attacks, pictures and video were being used online during live broadcasts from people's mobile phones who are in the thick of the action. Sky News has also relied heavily on mobile phone video during ongoing international affairs, most notably recently during the Arab Spring. For the producers, this meets the idea of cutting costs and less for more. They're receiving their content directly from the action without having to send out teams of trained journalists. In addition to this, trained working journalists themselves are now issued with mobile phones that contain decent recording video equipment to use when required. Mark Stone, the Sky News journalist, bravely managed to capture footage of looters using his mobile phone during the London riots earlier this year. This footage was the centrepiece of Sky's coverage of the riots that day. Blogging is becoming an integral part of both the newsroom and social media as more and more people turn to blogs for their news content. As touched on earlier with sports commentators, blogs can be used to explore news items and stories in greater depth, as generally there is no word limit online, unlike newspapers, and time restraints within TV and radio. BBC political editor Nick Robinson is a prominent blogger, and it can be said that blogs prove beneficial to audiences, as they are able to highlight issues differently and perhaps explain particular aspects in greater detail. It's also important to note there are no fixed formulas of what a blog is. It can be an opinion piece, news piece, podcast, map, or anything different. It's ever-changing and reflects the constant development of digital news. blogs have also experimented with different types of ways of providing information. It started with citizen journalism, and now it's been incorporated by media organisations such as the BBC and Sky. In addition to this, blogs have been an important tool for journalists in their news gathering. Take, for example, the WikiLeaks scandal. That was first released on an anonymous blog and became an integral piece of news across the globe. Furthermore, the Baghdad blogger was used by the BBC's Newsnight programme when they were unable to get journalists deep in the heart of Iraq during conflict there. Social media also brings journalists and consumers closer together and provides another opportunity for the ever-changing newsroom. As with blogs, Twitter and Facebook have allowed journalists to engage their audiences. Neil Mann, producer at Sky News, is a frequent tweeter and regularly becomes part of a debate with followers. Sky also encourage viewers to vote on opinion polls and interact with their presenters using Twitter during live broadcasts. So one could say that rather than posing as a threat to journalists, social media in fact helps news producers keep their finger on the pulse. As if as journalists we don't engage with our audiences, how can we give them what they really want? One could say, as Alison Gow notes in her blog, that the digital newsroom revolution has changed the development of news gathering, reporting and distribution entirely. Rather than the traditional model, stories now progress or are employed in a number of different mediums, and it could be suggested that thanks to the opportunity provided by the digital newsroom, stories are no longer closed in print, but are able to evolve to suit both audiences and producers.